I talked about my own history. In the late 70s, after I'd been in the Chronicle for a few years, one day, the Chinese hospital board of trustees called me, and the leadership told me that they were shutting down the Chinese hospital because the building was not up to code. So, to make a very long story short, I took a leave of absence from work and went to organize the community to help save the Chinese hospital. In the process, I recognized also that there wasn't that many people that could spend the time organizing community. Right around those years, my mother died. Then it freed me personally of the financial responsibility that I felt I owed her because, you know, she was getting older and poor health. So I stopped her from working because I started to work so that I could help my family. Once she passed on, then I took a look at my life and realized that there's a lot of things I could do. So together with some friends like Gordon Chin from the Chinatown, at that time it's called Chinatown Resource Center, and Annie Chung from the Self-Help, a lot of those nonprofits we started in those years, in the late 70s and early 80s, was all dedicated by a bunch of us to help our own community. One of the things that I've learned the year that I went to Columbia for my master's degree, I came back and they opened up a McDonald's, displacing several small businesses. And also, they tore down the oldest Chinese Buddhist temple on the continental United States. It's part of our history. They sold it for a developer, a major developer. And to our horror, you know, the insurance companies start encroaching with the financial institution into Chinatown and try to crowd us out. So we were on the hill, we were battered by all the hotels expansion. Down below the hill, we were pushed by the financial institutions, whether they were insurance company or banks. We were just a few square blocks. And that's the history of our people in America. And they have no concern. Just block by block, they take over. And oh, don't forget, there was redevelopment too. All these old houses, old buildings, they're not up to code, you know. They talk a very good talk, redevelopment. They want to come in and dismantle wholesale a community that had been ongoing for several hundred years. Overnight, you could see the whole block disappear. 1 year for college, I came back. Several blocks were lost. What government help? So we organized, and we found out land use was very important. We found out transportation was very important. So as a community, we organized, and we used what we learned locally, and then we organized. So for the last 30 somewhat years, this is just a summary of what happened to Chinatown per se. So we managed to a certain extent successfully, was that we were able to protect the housing stock, no matter how poor they are, no matter how inadequate they are, but at least they are affordable and they belong to us. We were able to save some of those low-income housing. I had fights with mayors who just come up to me and said, Rose, how could you be advocating to preserve the substandard housing? Those housing are unfit for animals. That's what one mayor told me. And I say, excuse me? What you're telling me is 40,000 of our people are lower than animals? Do you think by choice we want to live in those kind of substandard housing? Of course not. We do because we cannot afford anything better. But unless and until you have substitute housing to put them in first, you ain't going to touch anyone or dismantle any one of those substandard housing, what you call substandard housing, that they are unfit for animals. Then, as organizers, you go and fight for those meager dollars to bring those buildings up to code. We have some successes because a group like Gordon's, they managed to convert about 3,000 of those unit substandard housing into up-to-code housing. We are very far from, finishing the job, but at least we have been successful to a certain extent. And we did, over the 30-some-odd years, produce a lot of leadership that learned how to do those jobs, whether housing, whether it's in transportation, whether it's in small business loans, you name it, we have it. And we help each other out. For example, at the Chinese Chamber, we have our board members. Let's face it, we don't have big business. Don't delude yourself when the city talk about businesses, what is good for business. Downtown San Francisco Chamber, they're talking about Fortune 500 companies. They're not talking about this kind of business. So you have to learn that your business interest is different from their kind of business interest. Sometimes their interests conflict with yours, and your job is to differentiate what type of business benefit your own community, not their corporate communities. Then we put our small business leaders and put them to sit on all of our nonprofits, whether it's for housing, whether it's for transportation, whether it's the Historical Society, whether arts, whether it's for seniors, whether it's for health care. We train our own people and we put them on our own nonprofits. If they pass the test, they care about the community. They love the community passionately. they contribute even with their meager small business income, then you push them out to city commissions, because only then, after they have proven themselves that they really care for your own community, do we allow them to serve us under public, bigger, more prestigious commissions. Because when they make decisions and they carry city policy, those policies affect all of our people, our daily lives. And we make them responsible. They have to answer to the community, or else we gang up and make sure they do not get confirmed at the next Board of Supervisors confirmation hearing. Hey, don't do the mistake that just because they're Chinese, I have to support you. Hell, you could be worse than a white, you know, even if you are Chinese. If you don't care about your own people, what good is it that you sit there? They're going to change overnight. You have to make them prove first, then you support them outside. That's my motto. And so they'll say, well, Rose doesn't like this person, Rose doesn't like that person. It's not, I do not like that person. It's that because that person hasn't proven himself or herself that they are worthy of the community support, and you have to speak out and not afraid. And only then would you, get the leadership that are worthy of your support. That's fundamentally what we have been doing for 30 some odd years. That's how, in the end, we wound up with 5 Asians running for mayor last year, and only 1 got the majority of the Chinese community support. I'm telling you, our president of the board got how many percent? 3%? Our state senator who has been there forever, who claims he has never lost a race last year. He only got, what, 2% of our people's support? This is our own people. But you have to do that. And you have to be brave enough to confront your own people and say, sir, you don't represent us. I'm sorry. And it's not infighting. But if you set up some standard and some, rules that meets your own criteria for what your community needs, you go long ways. I'll be very frank with you. Mayor Atley won last time. 90% of the donation came from the Chinese American community. Don't for a moment believe the money came from downtown. There ain't no downtown money. The money did not come from the unions. They gave us $0. I have to sweat and bled for every dollar. And Mayor Lee is still trying to erase his campaign debt. The campaign, only cost a couple of $1 million. Consider that the last time Gavin Newsom ran for mayor, they spent $12 million. We only spent a total of less than $3 million. And 90% of that money came from our own community. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.